Most countries outside of the United States have a good handle on the pandemic. Hi guys, thank you for watching. My name is Sabrina and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, join the family, click on the subscribe button and the notification button next to it so you don't miss any future uploads. On today's video, I am going to talk about the many different ways that you can travel in 2021 and assure your safety. Many of us have had to postpone our 2019 travel plans, and some of us we're just tired. For those of us who love to travel or people that were planning to start to travel in 2019, the pandemic has ruined majority, if not all, travel plans worldwide for everybody. We could not go anywhere. Even if you wanted to YOLO it, be like, okay, you know what, YOLO, I'm still gonna travel during a pandemic. Between March and June, nobody could go anywhere unless you needed to be extradited from a country or you had some form of a work emergency. Then you could work with the embassy of that country and try to get the proper documentation for them to let you in. But beside that, for tourism travel, visiting family members and things like that was not doable between March and early June, because most of the world's borders were closed. No flights were coming in, no flights were going out. If you were there in that country, you were stuck. If you were trying to go to that country, you could not. Most airlines had canceled their flights and it was a nightmare. So around early June, certain countries started reopening their borders. You have countries in South America, some countries in Europe, but they were reopening their borders with some restrictions. Some will allow you in with a COVID test, a negative one that you have to take within a certain number of days before your departure time. Some would not allow, some did not require you to take one, like Mexico. Some countries you had to take one before you leave and you have to take one once you get to that country, like Ghana. So they wanted you to be double tested to make sure that you're not coming into the country with the virus and spreading it even further. And a lot of restrictions, entry restrictions and requirements were placed by different governments of different countries for tourists that were trying to get into those countries, right? As the world started reopening back between the month in June, and still reopening because there are some countries whose borders are still closed, like Indonesia. You can travel, like for example Bali. You can go to Bali right now if you're a digital nomad or if you have a business visa where you are doing some sort of an investment, and this is as of right now, which is early December 2020. Countries like Indonesia, majority of their borders are still closed. You have countries like Thailand who is still not letting US citizens in as of right now. So there is that. So tip number one in figuring out how to travel in 2021 and how to do so safely, the number one thing you need to do is to figure out your chosen destination if it is open to your country. I live in the United States, so I am a naturalized American. So being a naturalized American means that I have a US citizenship. So every time I'm planning to go somewhere now, I have to see that if the country is allowing US citizen in and what are the conditions, because as you know, we have done a very poor job at handling the pandemic in this country. So other countries are very apprehensive about letting US citizens into their countries, and some of them have very strict restrictions on how you could go as a US citizen, how you could go about doing that. So tip number one, figure out if the country you want to go to, if it's letting US citizen in. So how would you be able to figure that out, you may ask? Go to the embassy website, the US embassy website of that country. So you could just type into Google COVID-19 entry requirement for whichever country, let's say Brazil travel restrictions, or Costa Rica travel restriction COVID-19 entry requirement. It should lead you to the US Embassy website page for that country. So once you click on that, then it will give you the opportunity to see whether or not US citizens are allowed into the country, if whether or not a COVID test is required, what type of COVID test, how long before the departure must the test be taken, and also would a quarantine period be required as well? Would you be required to quarantine once you get into that country? These are the questions that you need answers to, and it makes no sense to be planning a trip, especially if the date is super close, if you don't have the answers to those questions. So granted, if it is December now and you're planning a trip for next December, a lot can happen in 12 months. So I would say like these would not be as precedent as it would be if you're planning a trip within the next 3 to 4 months. So you would need to know these details. Tip number 2, you need travel insurance. If you were the type of person that was not getting travel insurance before this, if you're gonna be traveling during a pandemic in 2021, you definitely need travel insurance. And don't just pick any travel insurance. You have to pick a travel insurance that covers COVID-19 related issues. Not just, because a lot of, prior to the pandemic, most people, the really good travel insurance packages were like cancel for any reason insurance, which means that within 48 hours of your trip, you can cancel, quote unquote, for any reasons. You don't have to give a proper reason. You don't have to show a doctor's note. You don't have to show loss of a job. There's certain documentation that would not have been required from you had you had a cancel for any reason insurance, as long as you cancel within the parameters that they give you. But cancel for any reason insurance is not really gonna cut it anymore. You need a travel insurance that covers COVID-19. Like, let's say you get the virus and you're no longer able to travel, that it covers that. It covers your medical expenses if you get the virus abroad. It covers your quarantining expenses. It covers a lot of issues that might arise should you be exposed to the virus, or should you catch the virus yourself, and without having to spend all that money out of pocket. You need a proper travel insurance policy that will cover these things for you. Per my research, there is a company called 7 Corners that do cover COVID-19 related travel issues, so definitely look into them. I'm not affiliated with them at all, and they're not sponsoring this video, but this is just research that I have done. But their packages with the COVID-19 inclusion ranges from 100 to 160 and or more. It depends on your age, your departure location, how long you're gonna be going abroad, and which country you are traveling to. All of that factors into what your price would be. But if you have to spend $150 to protect thousands of dollars of travel investments, I would entirely recommend it, because you want to make sure that all the money you're gonna be spending in order to travel, in order to visit a country, in order to be away and be in an environment where you could feel a little bit more free and that has better weather and all that good stuff and better food. You want to make sure that your travel investments are going to be protected. Tip number 3, take advantage of the travel deals that are going on right now. So because of the pandemic and the worldwide shutdown and the travel bans and the border closing and all of that, a lot of countries that were relying heavily on tourism were not getting, or still not getting, those tourism money anymore. So what is happening is that they are offering great deals in terms of accommodation, in terms of the flights that would be available to go to these countries as well. So pay attention to these, get you great deals that have good trip interruption or cancellation policies. You want to make sure that even though you're getting a good deal, that should you no longer be able to go on this trip, that your funds might has the possibility of being refunded, and that you will not have to stress about that as much. But nonetheless, amazing deals are going on for accommodation and flights for certain countries. And sometimes the opposite happens because there is a lack of demand. So this is like basic economics. If there's less demand but more supply, then the price goes down. If there's a higher demand and less supply, then the price goes up because there's not enough to offer it to everybody. So they're just gonna mark it up, and whoever can afford it can afford it. And when there is too much going on and there's too much availability but not enough people booking, then that's when they lower the price to attract more people. So sometimes airlines just cancel majority of their flights and they have like this amount of flights available, so whoever gets it gets it. That's when the prices starts going up because lower supply, higher demand. If they have a lot of flights available and not a lot of people are booking, then that's when they lower their flights. So definitely look into those deals and check out places that you might have wanted to go to before but was a little bit too pricey for you to go. Definitely check them out now, so you might find some deals that you're able to take advantage of that is not necessarily going to run you dry. Tip number 4. Tip number 4, pick destinations that have a good handle on the virus and on the pandemic. So most countries outside of the United States have a good handle on the pandemic. I was traveling, I was in South Africa early March, which is when things started really going like crazy worldwide. And the minute South Africa at the time only had 2 confirmed cases, but they were very adamant as to what they had a good control of it. They started with us from the minute we landed. They started checking our temperatures on the plane, like before we even get to immigration and customs. They started taking our temperatures on the plane. That's one. And once we got to immigration and custom, we had to be in a separate line because they wanted to make sure that everybody coming in is not coming in with a high fever and could potentially be infectious to everyone else that was at the airport. And they double checked us again before at immigrations before we were able to get our bags. That was number 1. Number 2, most restaurants would not let you in without a mask, and they make sure that you sanitize your hands before you step in. So it was a requirement, like they would not even let you pass the door without the mask, and they're not even gonna give you the opportunity to go use the hand sanitizer. They will pump it right in your hand. They will pump it right in your hand to make sure that your hands are sanitized before you touch their doors, before you touch any surfaces in their premises. So there was that, and then 3, I was in South Africa for about 2 weeks. So from early March to mid-March, right? So 3, the government has shut down all late afternoon and weekend activities. So clubs was no longer a thing. Restaurants could not serve alcohol after 6 p.m. in order to keep people at home and disinterested in going out. And also they started limiting business hours. And this was all before the shutdown, before the travel ban started going. And this was only with 2 confirmed cases. And we did not start really like putting procedures into place until we had thousands of cases into the United States. So I got to see how other countries and other parts of the world were handling the virus versus how we were handling it, and trust me, they were doing a much better job at keeping it contained. That is tip number 4. Whichever country you're picking, make sure that it's a country that has a good handle on it and that is doing everything in its possibility to keep it contained. Tip number 5, limit your exposure to group activities. So hear me out on that. So some of you might be like, well, Sabrina, you have a travel tour company and you do group trips. Yes, I do group trips. However, starting 2021, everybody that goes on my group trips for culture travels, they need to be negatively tested for COVID. So all of us in the group is gonna be known that we're all negative. But that's not something that you know of random people on the street at the destination that you're going to. So you don't know those people, you don't know if they got tested or not, you don't know if they have the virus or not. Obviously you're gonna be wearing your mask and you're gonna protect yourself. However, anything that is not necessarily crowd related should be what you seek out to do. So you could do certain activities at a distance if it requires a group, but ultimately anything that's like super closed in, I would avoid them. But that's just my recommendation. You could decide to do however, but the less group settings that you are, the less likely you would be exposing yourself. I would say don't stress out. Stress can do you even more harm than anything else while traveling, because 1, it impedes into your experience, and what is the point of even traveling if you're gonna be stressed out the entire time? Might as well stay home and remove that kind of stress. But if you are tired of being home, that was me like earlier this year, in August really, because last year I was out like 70% of the year. I traveled to 10 countries last year. So me being home from March to July was I could not do it. And other people are like, oh my God, finally some stillness. No, I can't deal with stillness. I don't like it too much. I can deal with it for a few days, but a few months, that's different. But yeah, I was ready to go. So in June, when countries started reopening their borders, I tried to figure out, okay, which country can I go to with a US citizenship right now, because most countries, even though they were starting to open, but they were not open to Americans. But I figured that, you know what? I live in Florida, USA. I could go to Mexico. Mexico is open to US citizen right now. It's not, they don't require you to take a COVID test. Not that it's actually a great thing, it was just more convenient for me. But and I decided to just go, and I spent 2 months in Mexico, and I have a whole Mexico Tulum series that I talk about in my other videos. Definitely check those out. But ultimately I did not allow myself to stress, and I was able to spend 2 months in Mexico. I met a lot of great people, and I did enjoy my time within limits, within certain restrictions, but ultimately I had a great time. So if you are going to be traveling in 2021 and you could, definitely do not allow yourself to be stressed out, because what's the point? What's the point if you're gonna be stressed out the entire time? Do the things that you need to do to make sure that you won't have any stress. Get tested before you leave. Even if the country that you're going to doesn't require it, at least for your peace of mind, you're gonna know that, you know what, I didn't have this when I left. And I would also recommend getting tested when you get back. That is one. And then get your travel insurance. Everything you're booking, from flight to accommodation, even certain activities that you pay for beforehand, make sure that they have a good cancellation policy, but at least that you could transfer it should you not be able to do on your go on your previously scheduled date, that perhaps you could transfer it to another date and still be able to go without losing that investment. Get your travel insurance. Pick a country that you're able to go to, the citizenship of your country you're able to go to. If you're Americans, make sure that they're letting Americans in, and what are the travel restrictions for that country. And also pick a country that you know you're gonna have a wonderful time within the limits that they have. So understand that for a lot of countries, like late night clubs and group parties and group anything that requires a crowd is not necessarily happening. So if this is what you usually travel for, so you would have to reconsider and reconfigure your travel itinerary and plans. However, you have to keep those things in mind. But ultimately, once you do all that, you take the precautionary measures that you need to take. You have your mask and your hand sanitizers at hand. What I like to do is I like to walk around with soap, so that way everywhere I go, including restaurants, certain stores, that I have access to water in a sink, then I will wash my hands as often as I possibly can, to make sure that I don't transfer bacteria from surfaces to surfaces to surfaces. You know what I mean? Because everyone's touching different surface. And also, another tip, when you're out, avoid touching as many things as you can. Avoid touching as many surfaces as you get. If it's not entirely necessary for you to touch a public surface that a lot of other people have touched, avoid doing that. And it's just something that's gonna have to be second nature to you, so that way it's like, okay, I would normally put my hands here, let's not do that. If you typically put your hands in your mouth, don't do that. So that's, again, avoid the transfer of bacteria. So guys, these are my tips as a traveler and travel company owner, and also as someone who has traveled during the pandemic. I spent 2 months in Mexico and I spent a week in Haiti, and I got to see how different countries are handling the pandemic, and also I got to see what it's like traveling during the pandemic as well. Should you have any other questions regarding this topic, please leave it in the comment section below, and I look forward to hear your thoughts and your 2021 travel plans. And also put down where you plan on going for 2021 and how do you think those travel journeys and experiences are about to be. So definitely subscribe. Thank you for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!